Ismail Ould Cheikh Ahmed is the UN Special Envoy for Yemen. He joins us now here in the studio. Great to have you with us. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
How optimistic are you about these upcoming talks?
I can tell you I'm optimistic. I know that the situation is quite difficult. We have been aware about that. We have been following. I have been in Yemen twice now, and I know Yemen from before. But I'm optimistic because I think, as we have said from day one, there is only one solution, is a peaceful solution. We believe that the only way to get this war stopped is by the Yemeni coming around the table, agreeing on a ceasefire, and agreeing on discussion, what we have been describing from day one as our three pillars. We have been saying that any dialogue in Yemen should start around three pillars, which are the GCC initiative, the national dialogue and its outcomes, and the Security Council resolution. We have been very clear on this from day one. Now, when the Yemeni come together, that's what makes us very optimistic, is when they come together, they will be able to find definitely a solution to this terrible war.
Now, it's great that they're coming and they're saying they're not having any preconditions, but what are they willing to compromise on? What is each side bringing to the table?
You see, what we know is, as I said earlier, what is the guiding now, I would say, factor for everybody to come together is the suffering of the population, which your report has well described, and the level of the suffering that we witnessed today in Yemen, where the humanitarian situation has been quite dramatic. For me, what I think has been a good development recently is during my discussion with the Houthi recently, I have seen some flexibility about discussing the Security Council resolution. They have given us that they are ready to positively deal with the Security Council resolution. Of course, they said provided there is no infringement with the national sovereignty, but for us, I think that's a good progress. Of course, in terms of the international community and the UN position, the issue of legitimacy has to be on the table because the legitimacy is a fact that the international community recognizes. The elected president has to be respected. Now, how are the Yemeni going to see a transition? Are they going to organize a new election? Are they going to have a new political agreement in a second phase? That's something up to the Yemeni. But for the international community, for the UN, for the Security Council resolution, I think the issue of legitimacy is a fact.
And you've had signs from the Houthis that they are willing to respect the legitimacy of the government in exile, Hadi's government? I
have reason to believe that they will be part of, if that's part of a deal, that they will respect that, yes.
Okay, and Hadi's government, for their part, what are they likely to bring to the table?
Of course, the discussion in Riyadh, which we have had several times with President Hadi and his team, are around the legitimacy being a fact to be respected, on which we agree. The Security Council 2216, which is in fact why we are going to Geneva, is exactly, we say ourselves there are two ways of implementing a Security Council resolution, either by going on violence, which has now, as you know, been going for over 70 days, or either by going to talks. And we believe that we can implement still, and our aim is to implement the 2216, particularly in terms of the withdrawal, in terms of having, as I said, the main, our expectations about Geneva are not also extremely high, because we know it's a first phase of a long-term process. So we believe we have to go there to have a discussion on a ceasefire, which is extremely urgent because of the humanitarian, then have a discussion on withdrawal and the modalities, and a monitoring mechanism, because we don't want the same thing that happened during the humanitarian pause, where we had violation and we couldn't monitor them.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because, of course, we know from history that it's very difficult to talk whilst attacks are ongoing, and we've seen a lot of attacks from both sides in the last couple of days especially. How optimistic are you that we'll get a ceasefire before and during these talks? I
think it's an important point, and the Secretary General, as you know, has been calling for even an immediate pause, an humanitarian pause, first of all because to lower the suffering of the population, two, to prepare, I would say, conducive environment for the dialogue. And we believe you are absolutely right. It will be very difficult to be sitting in Geneva where we have, a war ongoing. But, what we have seen until now is two positions. One side, meaning the Houthi and the Pro-Saleh, saying the GPC saying we need a ceasefire first before going to any talks. From the other side, we have seen implementing 2216. Otherwise, we don't go to any discussion. So what we are saying, let's go to Geneva with no precondition, sit there and have a package on which we have a ceasefire, on which we have an agreement already on the withdrawal, which is one of the biggest elements which will ensure the return of the government and the return of the real implementation of the 2216, and then have a mechanism of monitoring. So it's in a way linked. But I can tell you, the Security Council members have outlined this several times. The Secretary, we need a pause, and that pause is urgent, and I have been repeating it.
Okay. Ismail Ould Cheikh Ahmed, great to have you, and I hope we get a chance to speak to you again after these talks takes place next Sunday.
Thank you very much for inviting me.